Story 1. I keep seeing posts about stolen campsite experiences, so I thought I might share my encounter with a couple of entitled older campers who decided to take our reserved spot. This happened a few years ago in a fairly popular mountain town that's known for its quirky charm so much so that it even has a dog serving as the honorary mayor. Maybe it was the perfect setting for the kind of silliness that unfolded. I had booked a lovely campsite that seemed to have ample shaded space for my rather large tent. It was located at the end of an inner loop, away from any of the larger roads, and it only had one neighboring site. So overall, a very nice and peaceful location. We arrived around 3 p.m., which was an hour after the official check-in time, so not exactly late. To our surprise, there was a camper van already parked in our spot, and several personal items were spread around. Chairs, a grill despite a fire ban that prohibited charcoal grills, and various other bits of clutter. However, no one was immediately visible. Hoping someone was just inside the camper van, I called out a few polite hellos, and eventually, an older couple emerged clearly disturbed from what seemed to be a midday nap. I very politely told them, "Hey, sorry, but we have this spot reserved." I had my reservation confirmation pulled up on my phone in case there was any confusion. For a few moments, they just stared at me blankly before finally replying. "But no one was here," the man said, as if that alone justified taking a campsite that had a clearly posted, reserved sign with my last name on it. I was honestly at a loss for how to respond to that logic. I explained that we had been delayed by traffic and pointed again to the reservation sign, making it clear that this spot was in fact spoken for. Their next response left me completely baffled. "Yeah, but they all say that." Well, yes, that's because there was literally a sign posted at the entrance stating that the campground was full and all sites were reserved. Trying to remain civil, I suggested that if they needed a site, they should speak to the campground host. I knew full well the campground was at capacity, but figured maybe they'd had a cancellation or something could be worked out. That's when they hit me with, "Oh, we have a site. We just like this one better. Maybe you should find a different one." This wasn't even phrased as a suggestion, it was more of a demand. I stood there with my mouth open for a second, stunned. This was one of the few sites big enough to fit a tent of our size comfortably, but apparently they needed the particular parking spot more than we needed the tent space we had booked months in advance. At that point, I was completely done being patient. I firmly told them that I had reserved this specific site months ago and was not going to back down. I also made it clear that I would go get the campground host or a park ranger if they insisted on staying and continued to be uncooperative. Honestly, it felt like trying to reason with a toddler. They finally gave up and started packing their belongings, all the while giving me annoyed looks and muttering under their breath. My actual toddler, who was growing restless and just wanted to play in the dirt by then, didn't seem to notice or care about the awkward tension. It took them about 30 minutes to gather up all their things. As they left, still grumbling, I could only imagine what they were saying to each other about young people these days. The most satisfying part came later, when we happened to drive by their actual reserved site on our way out. Sure enough, it was terrible. There was no shade, the ground was uneven and slanted, and it was right on the outer loop next to the road. Exactly the kind of spot people avoid if they book early, which is precisely why I had made my reservation well in advance. So yes, they had a site. They just wanted mine because it was better, and they thought showing up early and claiming it would be enough to make it theirs. But in the end, doing things the right way, booking ahead, staying calm, and standing your ground paid off. We got to enjoy our shaded, peaceful site, and they had to go back to the noisy, sunny one they had originally been assigned. It's a lesson in entitlement, really. Some folks think the rules don't apply to them if they simply like an outcome better. But sometimes, life has a way of humbling that kind of thinking. Story 2. I owned an IT company, we'll call it Ubertech, that strictly manages business networks. No website development, graphics, etc. One of my employees was tackling an interesting support request with instructions for making changes to a company's website. This happens from time to time where a customer gets confused with their various tech vendors or assumes that we provide all tech-related services. Being in earshot, I can tell that my employee's call was quickly escalating with a frustrated person on the other end, and he has already offered to pass the call off to his manager, me. Ubertech, how can I help you? I want to know what is going on here. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're calling me, and I don't know why you have my support information. Sir, to be honest, I don't know who you are, why we are calling you, and why we have your support information either. But together I think we can figure this out. I understand that you have a website and made a request for some changes. Who hosts your website? Derp Company. On their support website, there are instructions to send support requests. I followed them, and now I have you calling me with my support information. Sir, I definitely want to get down to the bottom of this. We do not even offer website services. If you would please work with me, I am sure we can get an answer. What I want to do is have you share your screen with me and then show me what you did to request support. I had him run our remote control software. He then proceeded to navigate to DerpCo's support website, support.derpco.com, navigated through the customer self-service pages to a knowledge base article, KB, on how to submit a support. He pulled up this specific KB article, and I was staring at a verbatim copy of an article that I had written on our own support site. There were no changes to the article, including the step 2, email your support request to, and it was my company's email address right there. Thank you for taking the time to show me this. I think I found the problem. Notice the email address in the instructions. It is telling you to email ubertech.com. That is us. Now, please allow me to show you something. I then scrolled down to the bottom of DerpCo's plagiarized support article and noted the creation date, 27. I then navigated to our company support website, support.ubertech.com, and navigated to our own matching article. We both confirmed that it was the same article, and I showed him the creation date of our article, 2005. Oh, look at that, he said. I think it is safe to say that DerpCo has stolen our content, did not even update the instructions, misleading you to send a support request to us. I am sure you have a few things to take care of with Derp Company. I would appreciate it if you do not mention us when you call them. Of course, sir. Thank you for your time with this. I immediately searched DerpCo's support website looking for more of our stolen content, found a total of 5 articles, and promptly printed them out and saved copies as PDF. So what to do in this situation? Do I call the owner of DerpCo? This is a small town, so I needed to be clever and not taint my own image. How do I get revenge? Hire a lawyer. Leave the articles as is and hope more support requests come to us that can bring us business. Revenge unleashed. No, I wrote a press release. News release date for immediate release. Title, Ubertech endorsed by local competitor. I got some great kudos from local businesses. One client in particular was rolling. 2 days later, I get an email from the owner of DerpCo. I would appreciate it if you were to remove the press release from your website. This is a small town, and it is just not good business. I went to their support site and still found 3 articles from our company. I wrote back and told them that I would be happy to do so, but there are at least still 3 articles on their support site that need to be removed. 2 days later, I got another email confirming that the articles were removed. Epilogue. In the end, I took down our press release, but still had a copy kept in our office and would tell this story to our new employees. Story 3. So back in high school, I was in what you might call a problem class. Just about everyone was rowdy, rude, and didn't listen to the teachers. I, on the other hand, was an introvert who liked to keep to himself. But that didn't exempt me from the collective punishment our class frequently got. So I tended to resent not only the class that got me in trouble for doing nothing, but the teachers who enacted it as well. One day the school decided to take a new direction in punishment and started what they called enrichment activities instead of giving us extra homework or detention. They'd send us on field trips to local areas to do different activities like cleaning up litter or volunteering at a soup kitchen. I loved this because not only was I getting less homework, but I often didn't need to be around my classmates, who would take this time to goof off with their own friend groups. Eventually, our enrichment activity took us to a park outside our small city where a nature center put on a show of all the rescue animals they were allowed to bring. A big snake that was a pet but was released into the wild, a red-tailed hawk they were nursing back to health, etc. And after that we had a choice. We could either go on a long hike or we could go fishing. I love nature, and I visit my cousin's cabin once every summer, so I chose to go fishing. I even asked beforehand if I could bring my own rod and tackle. I was told yes, especially since the school was footing the bill for the rest of the rods and the bait. So when they separated us into the two groups for our activities, I was kind of surprised at how small the fishing group was. It was just me and 5 others. But I figured it was for the best since less people meant less noise to scare the fish away, right? Nope. As soon as I noticed who else signed up for fishing, I realized that it was a group of the loudest, most rambunctious group of teenage boys in the school, who thought they'd be the only ones to sign up so they could just hang out. But unfortunately, I did sign up and actually wanted to fish, so they were stuck fishing. And they let me know, as soon as my hook hit the water, they were loudly complaining about how boring this was and trying to get the chaperones to let them go somewhere else. But to no avail. Eventually I got sick of them and told a chaperone I was going further down the lake to try and find a better spot. But really I was just trying to get away from the noise. Once I found a nice spot, I pulled out my best lure and spent some time fishing, and fairly quickly caught something. I reel it in, and I had caught a pretty nice-sized smallmouth bass. I ran back to the group to show everyone, mostly because the chaperones always insisted on getting pictures of these events, and the boys went from complete disinterest to excitement very quickly. Now that they saw someone could actually catch something, they wanted to catch something too. I felt a fair amount of pride for about 5 seconds. As soon as I released the bass and went back to my spot, the whole group followed me, staying as loud as they were before. I tried to tell them that they'd scare off the fish, but they didn't listen, so I tried to go to a new spot, and they followed me there too. At this point, I just wanted to fish in peace. I asked a chaperone to get them to stop following me, but she chastised for getting them interested, then not teaching them how to fish better. Eventually, I got sick of them and hatched an idea. I swapped out my lure for a regular hook and marched over to a spot with a lot of reeds and lily pads. I told everyone that fish like to hide in the reeds from predators, true, and that the best way to catch fish during the daytime is to try and get their hooks in the middle of the reeds, not true, and they believed me. Pretty soon they were getting frustrated as their hooks got caught on reeds. One guy cast his line so far it got caught on a branch. Another pulled so hard trying to get his line out of the reeds that he broke the crappy rod the school bought. And eventually they all gave up and went back to the first spot to hang out again, and I got to spend the rest of the trip fishing in peace. Story 4. This happened about a week ago, and I'm still kind of shaken up about it. I'm 15 and live with my mom in a pretty quiet neighborhood. We have 2 rescue dogs that basically saved my life during some really dark times. My mom works long hours as a nurse, especially since the pandemic started, so taking care of the dogs became mostly my responsibility. Not that I mind, these dogs mean everything to me. The older one is this sweet golden retriever mix, who's about 7 years old. She came from a really bad situation where her previous owners basically neglected her. When we first got her, she was so skinny you could see her ribs, and she was terrified of everything. It took months of patience and love to get her to trust people again. The younger one is a beagle mix, maybe 3 years old, who was found abandoned in a parking lot during a thunderstorm. She's got way more energy, but she's also super loyal. Since the pandemic started, our daily walks became even more important. With everyone stuck inside, these dogs needed their exercise, and honestly, so did I. We have this regular route we take that goes through the main part of our neighborhood and loops back home. It usually takes about an hour depending on how many times they stop to sniff things. Last week, I decided to take just the older dog out because the younger one was completely knocked out on her favorite blanket. She'd spent the morning chasing squirrels in our backyard and was exhausted. So I grabbed the leash and we headed out on our usual route. About halfway through our walk, I noticed this new donut shop had opened up where an old flower shop used to be. The smell coming from inside was incredible, and I could see these amazing-looking donuts through the window. My stomach started growling because I'd skipped breakfast that morning. I walked up to check it out and saw a sign on the door that said no pets allowed inside, which I totally understood. But what was really cool was that the owners had set up this little area right outside specifically for people with dogs. There was a metal post with hooks for leashes and even a big water bowl that looked like it got refilled regularly. I clipped my dog's leash to one of the hooks and gave her some water. She seemed happy enough, just lying down in the shade while watching people walk by. I figured I'd be quick, just grab a donut and maybe a coffee, and we'd be on our way. Inside, there were only 3 other customers ahead of me, so I thought it would be fast. While I was waiting in line, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through social media. The line was moving pretty slowly because one customer was asking about every single donut flavor, and another was having trouble deciding between different coffee drinks. I was probably inside for about 5 minutes when I heard this horrible sound from outside. It was my dog making this awful yelping noise that I'd never heard before. My heart just dropped because I knew something was really wrong. I rushed outside and saw this woman, probably in her 40s with short blonde hair, standing over my dog, hitting her repeatedly with a black umbrella. She was swinging it down hard, over and over, while my dog was trying to get away, but couldn't because she was still attached to the leash. I yelled at the woman and demanded to know what she was doing to my dog. I ran over and immediately unhooked my dog's leash, pulling her away from this crazy woman. But she didn't stop. She kept trying to hit my dog with the umbrella, and when I got in the way, she started hitting me too. I felt the umbrella smack against my leg at least twice. The woman screamed that my dog had scratched her car. I looked around confused because there were no cars anywhere near where my dog had been lying. The closest car was across the street, at least 30 feet away. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about because my dog had been right there the whole time. She started yelling even louder, claiming that she had seen my dog running around without a leash and jumping all over her car with dirty paws. She pointed across the street to this white sedan that honestly looked like it hadn't been washed in months. From where I was standing, I couldn't see any scratches, but even if there were some, there was no way my dog could have caused them. I tried to explain that my dog had been leashed the entire time and had never left that spot. But this woman was completely out of her mind. She insisted that what I was saying wasn't true and claimed that she had to chain my dog up herself after the dog attacked her car. She called me an irresponsible kid who didn't know how to control my animal. I was so confused I could barely think straight. This woman was talking like she had put my dog on the leash, but I had clearly done that myself before going inside. None of what she was saying made any sense. The whole situation was getting more and more crazy, so I pulled out my phone and called the police. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, the woman kept yelling about how I needed to pay for her car repairs and how she was going to sue me. She demanded to know if I had insurance because she wasn't going to pay to fix what my monster had done to her car. I told her I was 15 and didn't even know what she was talking about. She then said that my parents better have insurance because this was going to cost hundreds of dollars. The police arrived pretty quickly, maybe 10 minutes after I called. The woman was still going on and on about her car when they walked up. One of the officers was this older guy who looked like he'd dealt with situations like this before, and the other was a younger woman who immediately went over to check on my dog. One of the officers told the woman she needed to calm down so they could figure out what happened. She got even more worked up and told them that my dog had destroyed her car and then attacked her when she tried to stop it. She demanded that they arrest us. She pointed dramatically at my dog, who was now hiding behind my legs and shaking. The poor thing was clearly traumatized from being hit with the umbrella. The officers separated us so they could get both sides of the story. The older officer took the woman over to her car, while the younger one stayed with me. The officer asked me to tell her what happened. I explained that I had been inside getting a donut and my dog was leashed the whole time. When I came out, this lady was hitting her with an umbrella for no reason. She asked how long I had been inside. I told her maybe 5 minutes because there were only a few people ahead of me in line. She wanted to know if my dog had been secured the entire time. I assured her that I had put the leash on the hook before going inside and my dog never moved from that spot. While I was talking to the officer, I could hear the woman across the street getting more and more worked up. She was pointing at her car and waving her arms around, clearly getting frustrated that the other officer wasn't immediately taking her side. After about 10 minutes, both officers came back over to where I was standing with my dog. The officer told me they had looked at the car and the damage the woman was claiming didn't match up with what could have been caused by a dog. Plus, they had checked with the donut shop and they had security cameras that showed my dog never left the area. The woman must have overheard because she started screaming again. She claimed the cameras were fake and that this was all a conspiracy. She yelled that cops never believe the victims. The officer told her she needed to calm down or they were going to have a problem. She refused and said she wasn't calming down. She insisted that my vicious animal had attacked her and they were taking our side. That's when I realized she was talking about how my dog had tried to defend herself when the woman was hitting her with the umbrella. Of course, my dog had snapped at her. She was being attacked by a stranger. The officer explained that based on what they could see from the camera footage and witness statements, the woman was the one who had initiated physical contact with the dog. She insisted that wasn't true and claimed she was defending herself. The officer told her she needed to come with them. The woman completely lost it when the officer tried to approach her. She started backing away and yelling about how this was all unfair and how she was going to sue everyone. She screamed that they couldn't arrest her because she was the victim. She claimed my dog was dangerous and should be put down. When she said that about my dog, I felt this surge of anger, but I knew I needed to stay calm and let the police handle it. The officers tried to get her to cooperate, but she kept backing away and eventually took a swing at one of them with her umbrella. That was it. They immediately moved in and handcuffed her. She kept yelling that this was harassment and that she was going to sue all of us. She threatened that we would be hearing from her lawyer. She kept screaming threats and curse words when they put her in the back of the police car. Even through the closed windows, we could still hear her yelling when they drove away. The younger officer stayed behind to finish up the paperwork and make sure my dog was okay. She asked if my dog was hurt. I told her I didn't think so, but she was pretty shaken up. The officer suggested I might want to have a vet check her out just to be safe. She also asked if she needed to call my parents. I told her I should probably call my mom. The officer was really nice about the whole thing. She gave me a case number and explained that the woman had been charged with animal cruelty and assault since she had hit both me and my dog. She also said that if the woman did try to sue us, we had the police report and video evidence to back up our side of the story. My mom came to pick us up, and she was furious when she heard what happened. We took my dog to the emergency vet just to make sure she wasn't injured, and thankfully she was fine physically. But she was definitely traumatized by the whole experience. It's been about a week now, and we haven't heard anything about the woman trying to sue us. My dog is slowly getting back to normal, but she's still more nervous around strangers than she used to be. We've been working with her to rebuild her confidence, and she's making progress every day. I still can't believe someone would just randomly attack a dog like that. The whole thing was so bizarre and scary. But I'm grateful the police believed us, and that we had evidence to back up what really happened. Story 5. Throwaway because it'll be easy to find my real identity. In 2008, I was involved in a federal lawsuit when my rural Texas high school tried to suspend me for wearing a shirt supporting the Democratic hopeful John Edwards. Hindsight is 20/20. They said it was a violation of the dress code, which was only ever selectively enforced. My parents had my back and agreed that it was, to quote my very white dad, redneck cracker nonsense. I'll never forget during the initial meeting when my principal called in a school board member. He said that if I got suspended, I would probably get kicked off the football team, and that could hurt me getting into college. It didn't matter. I was a miserable player and a smart kid, so it wasn't going to be what took me to college. But the slimy fake concern as he tried to leverage my future against my speech is something I'll never forget. Anyway, as the case goes on, the squeeze gets tighter. First, they have the football coaches try to get me to drop it. Having the football coaches talk about how my selfishness means that they can't wear Fellowship of Christian Athletes shirts anymore, trying to embarrass me in front of the team. I'm a fat kid who openly plays Magic: The Gathering in high school. Hit me with your best shot, I have no shame. Next, they host a meeting with all the teachers telling them I'm a problem and that they need to keep an eye on me in case I slip up. I found this out years after the fact when I bumped into my English teacher at a friend's wedding. Finally, they just start pulling in students from my classes to get them to say bad stuff about me. I was a class clown, so this turns into every single dirty joke, rude comment, or loud fart I ever made getting reported to school administration, which then leads to this awful little toady vice principal calling me and my parents in and reading them back in front of my mother. That one stung. My parents still knew it was nonsense, but who wants their locker room jokes aired in front of their mom? They used this as a pretext to expel me for 6 weeks, citing inappropriate sexual conduct. They shoved me into the disciplinary alternative education program, and I am steaming. The program is basically where they warehouse kids with emotional problems they can't handle. You just sit in a room in a refurbished insane asylum and can't do anything but read or use the computer for monitored educational purposes. You also get booted from extracurriculars while you're in there. I know at this point they want me to make a scene so they can punish me further, so I do the exact opposite. I channel all my rage and new free time into my schoolwork. Doing homework I would usually ignore because I knew I could ace the test. Now I'm doing both and my GPA is climbing. I start looking into scholarships and find a bunch that are really interested in political activism, and guess who now knows a little bit about that? I apply and rip my school a new jerk in every one. Then, I work with my dad, and we find an attorney who will take our case pro bono, which means while the school bleeds fees, it doesn't cost us anything to keep it in court. I spent those weeks like a monk, motivated entirely by spite, doing everything I could to make their nonsense work for me. I got out, got back on all my teams, and ended up applying for a prestigious honors program at my dream school. Not only did I get in, but I got way more financial support than I thought I would. Eventually we lost the case, but the school had to abolish the dress code anyway because they couldn't afford to get sued over it again. I don't like the idea that a school lost money, but man, they made the choice. They could have backed down whenever. Now I've graduated law school, am taking the bar in 2 weeks, and already have a job investigating government corruption. I'm getting paid to be a pain in the butt of petty authority, and it's pretty sweet. Story 6. Okay, so this literally happened about 20 minutes ago at the time of writing. Unfortunately, this story involves my own mother. Yes, really. Anyway, let's get on with the story. My friend came over to my house to give me a trigonometry textbook for school and decided to stay a bit longer to play a tactical shooter game Rainbow Six Siege with me on his laptop, which he brought along. Maybe about 20 minutes passed, and we were in my room playing casual matches when my mom suddenly started pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. I lock my door when I play video games because my mom has a habit of grabbing my microphone while I'm playing and asking strangers what math they are currently studying in school. She's a math teacher and is incredibly enthusiastic about mathematics, but that's a story for another time. This time, she yelled and said, "Where is my charger?" She started banging on the door so hard that it felt like it might break. so I got up and unlocked it only to be yelled at even more. My mom, where is my phone charger? I think it's important to mention here that neither my friend nor I use iPhones. We both have Android phones and therefore have no need for iPhone Lightning cables. Me? I don't have it. I wouldn't take it. I have no use for an iPhone charger. My mom, well, yes you do, so give it back. When I stayed silent, she turned and said, then your friend has it. My friend, I use an Android phone too. I wouldn't take your iPhone charger. My mom, well, yes you do, so give it back. We both stayed silent for a moment. Then my friend calmly said, I have no use for your charger because my phone uses a USB Type-C port, and your charger is for Lightning ports. Well, it works for all phones. Show me your phone and I'll prove it to you. Before my friend could say anything, she grabbed his phone out of his hand and stormed off into her room. Both of us were sitting there completely confused, trying to understand her logic. A moment later, she came back into my room, holding her iPhone cable and my friend's phone. Yes, the same cable she had claimed was lost. Well, explain this, she exclaimed as she tried to jam the iPhone cable into his phone's charging port. Aha! She then threw the phone back to my friend and once again demanded that he return her cable. Me, don't you have it in your hand? My mom looked at her hand and realized she was indeed holding her cable. She turned red with embarrassment, but immediately shifted the blame back onto us. My mom, well, you shouldn't be talking back like a brat. She stormed off, clearly knowing she had made a mistake, and we just went back to playing video games, trying to forget what had just happened because it made no sense. My friend left about 5 minutes later, and everything seemed to go back to normal until I got a text. It read, Dude, your mom jammed the cable in and broke my charging port. In case that doesn't make sense to some people, iPhone chargers use a Lightning connector, which is thinner and shaped differently than a USB Type-C connector. The USB Type-C port has a small pin in the middle for charging, and my mom jammed the iPhone cable in so forcefully that she broke the internal pin. Feel free to look it up if you're not sure. I told my mom about what happened, and she refused to believe that it was her fault. So, yeah, that was frustrating. Update. I explained to her that forcing the wrong cable into the port caused the damage to the phone. Still unconvinced, I asked her if I could jam a micro USB cable, which is one-sided, into her iPhone, and she immediately said no. That's when she began to realize how mistaken she had been. Eventually, she very reluctantly admitted she would buy him a new phone, so in the end, we actually won that argument.